Mauritius, Prefect of Rome, paced the marble corridors of his villa, but the opulence surrounding him felt like an insult. The power he wielded over the mightiest city in the world was useless within his own home. In a silent, candle-lit room, his daughter, Cassia, burned with a fever, her breath shallow and erratic. The empire's finest physicians had all departed, shaking their heads in defeat. His prayers to the Roman gods echoed in empty temples. The air was thick with the scent of medicinal herbs and despair. Outside, Rome itself was burning with paranoia. Emperor Nero had found his scapegoats, the followers of a crucified carpenter. The emperor has declared Christianity a forbidden cult, Mauritius repeated to himself, and Paul of Tarsus its greatest offender. An agitator who, according to the rumors, spread a plague of disobedience and madness through the city. A sorcerer of the dark arts who challenged the Roman order. His wife, Livia, found him in the atrium, her eyes red and swollen. "She is getting worse, Mauritius." The physician said there is nothing more to be done. The prefect felt the armor of his authority crack, revealing only the terrified father beneath. It was then that one of his guards, a rugged man from Britannia, dared to speak. "Sir, there are whispers in the streets about the prisoner's powers. They say he can heal the lame with the mere touch of his cloak." Mauritius stared at him with fury. To resort to a criminal, a follower of that despicable sect. It was a humiliation. But as he looked towards his daughter's room, he saw death drawing near. And in that moment, his Roman pride became smaller than his fatherly love. He knew what he had to do. As much as he hated it, he would descend into the filth of the Mamertine Prison to confront the man he considered the source of all his troubles. He was not going in search of a miracle, but for a final, desperate gamble. The Mamertine Prison was a foul pit in the heart of Rome, a place where hope went to die. The stench of disease and dampness filled the air as Mauritius descended the stone steps, his immaculate toga looking out of place amidst the filth. In the deepest cell he found Paul. The man was old, his body scarred from lashings, but his eyes shone with a lucidity that defied the darkness. Beside him, a younger man with Greek features wrote diligently on a scroll by the light of an oil lamp. "Paul of Tarsus," Mauritius said, his voice echoing with authority. "I expected more, at least a man who could stand upright." Paul looked at him, not with fear, but with an unnerving calm. "You seem less like a leader and more like a slave," the prefect continued, trying to assert his dominance. Luke the Greek looked up. "My name is Luke. I am a physician." Mauritius ignored him, focusing on Paul. "Your sect is a cancer in this city. Your followers are beaten, raped, and killed. And for what? For a God who does not save them." Paul answered, his voice weak but firm. "For our Lord's sake we are put to death all day long, considered sheep for the slaughter." Mauritius scoffed. "Even sheep will revolt if they are whipped with enough force." He moved closer, his frustration overflowing. "You claim to serve a God who is above all others, but I see before me only a man in chains." Paul met his gaze, and for the first time Mauritius felt he was not the one in control. "I deserve worse," Paul said, but where sin increased, grace overflowed. The answer made no sense to the logical Roman mind of Mauritius. He had come to intimidate, to perhaps extract a confession, but he found himself confronted by a philosophy he could not subdue. He saw weakness in the old man's body, but an unshakable strength in his spirit, and that frightened him more than any rebel army. Back in his The atmosphere in Mauritius's villa was thick with tension. Roman guards watched with suspicion as Luke, the Greek, was led to Cassia's room. Livia, the mother, trembled with a mixture of fear and hope. Luke examined the girl with the calm of a professional. He turned to Mauritius. "Her chest is full of blood. If I do not drain it, she will die. Quick, give me your dagger." Mauritius, without hesitation, handed over the Pugio from his belt. Luke sterilized the blade in the flame of an oil lamp, and with a steady hand that belied the precarious situation, made a small incision. The girl cried out, a sharp sound that pierced the silence, and Livia stifled a sob. Mauritius's heart stopped. He had made a terrible mistake. He had delivered his daughter to a charlatan. But then something shifted. The dark fluid began to drain, and the girl's breathing, once a ragged gasp, became smoother, deeper. The fever seemed to break. Luke worked in silence, cleaning the wound, his movements precise and purposeful, minutes that felt like an eternity passed. Then Cassia opened her eyes. She looked not at her father or mother, but at Luke, and a faint but genuine smile lit up her pale face. The miracle was not a clap of thunder from the heavens or a divine light. It was silent, performed by the hands of a man who followed a God of love. Mauritius fell to his knees, not in prayer, but under the overwhelming weight of what he had witnessed, the power he sought from armies and decrees, the healing he begged from gods of stone, had been freely given to him by the very man he kept in chains. For the first time in his life, the great Prefect of Rome wept, not from grief, but from a gratitude so profound it broke him from within. In the days that followed, Cassia's laughter returned to the villa, a sound Mauritius thought he would never hear again. He returned to the prison. One last time. He did not come as a prefect, but as a man seeking to understand. Thank you felt like a small, empty word for what had been given to him. Paul, sensing the change, spoke of life. Imagine that your life is the water you can hold in your cupped hands. It always slips through your fingers, no matter how tightly you grasp it. But the kingdom I speak of is the entire ocean. Those who follow Christ live for that endless expanse. Mauritius finally began to understand. His whole life was spent trying to hold that handful of water, power, status, control, and it was all slipping away regardless. He could not free Paul. Nero's order was absolute, and to defy it would mean death for him and his family. On the day of the execution, Mauritius watched from a distance. He saw Paul walk to his death, not as a defeated criminal, but with the peace of a man going home. He heard the words echo among the crowd. To live is Christ, and to die is gain. The death of Paul was not the end. That night, Mauritius acted. He used his authority to ensure that Luke, the Greek physician, and his precious scrolls escaped the city in secret. It was a dangerous act, a betrayal of Rome, but an act of fidelity to something greater he had just discovered. As he watched Luke's small boat disappear down the Tiber River, Mauritius knew that the story of Paul had not died. He, the Roman prefect, the persecutor of Christians, had become the unlikely guardian of his legacy. The seed of grace had been planted in the hardest of soils, and he knew with a terrifying and wonderful certainty that it would one day flourish.